We're going to talk about Texas A&M quarterback Marcel Reed and preview the 2025 season for Marcel Reed. If you watched the channel before, you know we covered Marcel Reed quite often last year in the 2024 season. So we're going to talk about what stands out from Marcel Reed. What are like three qualities that we think stand out, some improvement areas. We're going to take some time looking at our QB spotlight model, which we created this offseason, and we'll go over kind of what it weighs and what's important there. We'll go real quick over 2024 game by game, what stood out, what were some of those better games, and we'll look at the 2025 schedule. With that said, let's go ahead and preview A&M quarterback Marcel Reed. So what stood out from Marcel Reed? Three main things. Obviously, his athleticism is probably the number one thing that stood out. And we're going to look at this a little bit more. We're going to look at what he showed on film, what the data shows here in a second. But number one, his athleticism. Number two, his comfortableness, if that's even a word, off of play action. He was much better off of play action. I'd like to see A&M utilize play action a bit more, especially if the run game is able to get going. And I think it will be, especially with Marcel Reed being a dangerous runner himself. Then number three, something that stood out that the model can't weigh or that stats and data can't show is his poise and his competitiveness. You know, throughout the entire season, not just battling the teams he played, but, you know, Connor Wegman. They were constantly competing, going back and forth until Reed took over after the LSU game. So I think it's his poise and his competitiveness that I think stood out to me as well. The areas that we want to see improve, again, we'll look at this when we talk about what the film shows and the data, is his consistency throwing the ball and getting rid of the ball quicker. I think kind of that goes hand in hand together. So with that said, let's go ahead and pull up this QB spotlight model. So this model isn't perfect. I'll go over how everything was weighed, what the limitations are. There are some limitations, but I think the model does a good enough job given a broad rating, if you will. So he came out to 78.1 QB spotlight rating, kind of puts him in the starter with upside. He showed flashes last year. Now it's just building consistency. And for context, the highest rating this year was 89.1 of any quarterback coming back. The average is right at 79.3, I think. So you can see Reed is right around the average. So let's look what the model actually takes into consideration. Number one, it takes into consideration accuracy and efficiency. That is something that Reed probably needs to focus on. His adjusted completion percentage was 67.8. His yards per attempt were 7.7. So we combine that to get a number. So we probably won't Reed in the 72 to 75 range when it comes to adjusted completion percentage, and we want him over 8 yards per attempt. If that was the case, his numbers would be in the low 80s right here. Number two, we look at explosiveness, pushing the ball downfield. He had 10 completions where the ball was thrown 20 yards or more downfield, and his completion percentage was only 27% of those throws. So for context, Lenore Sellers was 50% on those throws, the quarterback for South Carolina. DJ Lagway led the SEC over 50% on those type of throws. What really helped him, though, was his athleticism, his rushing yards. So 622 yards on the ground. Not including sacks. The model takes that in consideration, especially it weighs it heavily more at the college level than the NFL level. And so that helps Sellers a lot. His QBR, 74.3. That is what we consider the stat that takes in consideration third down and red zone ability, which he actually showed a good job of, largely because of his legs and against LSU. And then turnover avoidance, only 6 interceptions, 15 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So I thought he did a pretty good job there on turnover avoidance. So the 5 areas that this model takes into consideration: accuracy and efficiency, which is the completion percentage, adjusted completion percentage combined with yards per attempt; turnover avoidance, explosiveness. We look at how many completions was completed, and we take into consideration how many games he started. Right, that's a big part of it too. But how many completions he had on these type of throws, and then what his completion percentage was. We look at his athleticism, and then we can look at third down and red zone situational football, and we use QBR for that. The limitations are it doesn't take into consideration how he makes the team around him better. It doesn't take into consideration the opponents he plays. I mean, played LSU, Arkansas, some pretty tough teams last year, SEC teams, whereas some group of 5 quarterbacks may be rated higher, but you would take Marcel Reed over them. All right, so let's go ahead and keep this string going. So that's the QB spotlight model. If you have any questions about the model, you want a more detailed breakdown, let me know. I can send you the actual ranges and the scores and how we actually come up with that. So what did the film and data show last year? Well, number one, it showed his athleticism. Like we talked about, 620 22 yards on the ground, not including sacks. The LSU game showed how dangerous he can be on the ground. He literally only had 2 completions against LSU the second half. He was 2 of 2, but he took over the game using his legs. He was the third quarterback in the SEC in rushing touchdowns with 7. So we're going to see this, but teams are going to know that he's going to run the ball. They're going to plan for that. So this leads me to point number 2. What I think is something I want to hammer home is his play action versus non-play action. He was much better off of play action. He was much better with the help of getting defenders out of position. A lot of times utilizing play action can do that. So especially for a young quarterback, he had 7 passing touchdowns, only 1 interception. So all of his interceptions except one came without the use of play action. He had 8.5 yards per attempt off of play action. Again, his yards per attempt over the whole season was 7.7. So not utilizing play action really kind of his ability to push the ball downfield was stunted a little bit there. So I think utilizing play action a bit more. Only 25% of his dropbacks are off play action. So for context, Nico Yamalieva last year, I think over 50% of his completions or of his dropbacks were off of play action. Quinn Ewers was in the 40s. Jackson Dart was above 50. So you want to see some more play action. At least I think I do from Marcel Reed. I think that can help him settle down. And then his deep ball ability here. Let's talk about some improvement areas. His deep ball ability. I think he has the ability. One of the best throws in all of college football last year was his deep throw against LSU last year in the third, fourth quarter. That was a hell of a throw. But it's the consistency. Only 27 completion. His completion percentage is only 27% on throws where the ball was thrown 20 yards or more downfield. So you want to see some more consistency in that area there. And the last kind of improvement areas is you don't want to hold on the ball too long. I think that goes hand in hand with consistently driving the ball downfield. He was the number 1 quarterback in the SEC. He held the ball nearly 67% of his dropbacks. The ball was held longer than 2.5 seconds. That's for every SEC the quarterback that qualified. He was the last quarterback there. Now with Marcel Reed, you don't want to take that away completely because he can make plays with his legs, but it's hard to get in a rhythm when you're constantly holding on the ball and not finding a rhythm, not getting rid of the ball quickly. So I think the improvement areas: get rid of the ball quickly or quicker than needed last year. And that will help consistently drive the ball down field. So that was kind of what the film showed. That's what the data showed. I know if you've watched the channel before, we've done a lot of film breakdowns, but it's getting tougher and tougher to do that on YouTube just because of several copyright issues and the broadcast footage is not great. But hopefully we can continue to maybe show at least some of that. So let's talk about the 2024 season. It really took off against LSU, right? He made his first start against Florida. I thought he'd made some nice throws. Then against Bowling Green, Arkansas, Connor Wegman comes back in against Mizzou, and then eventually Reed takes over midway through the game, the third quarter against LSU, largely because of his legs. That was just kind of his coming out party. LSU, you saw the running potential, and then they went on. They only won one game after that, including the bowl game. They won against Mexico State. Then they lost to South Carolina after LSU lost to Auburn in double overtime, or maybe just one overtime. Lost to Texas. Then of course USC in the bowl game. But I thought you saw some improvement of Reed last year, pushing the ball downfield. Is just a consistency factor, right? Like we talked about, the consistency factor, accuracy, and efficiency. That was the main thing that dinged him on our QB spotlight model there. So how does that lead going into 2025? Let's look at the schedule real quick, right? So right now their win total is 8. So I think it largely depends on how you personally view Marcel Reed. Do you view him as taking the next step? If he takes the next step forward, they could definitely and probably should and will eclipse this win total. If he doesn't, or if he is kind of what he was last year, it may be tough to not just tie, but to potentially go under that win total. So I think a lot of it has to do with Marcel Reed. Obviously, there's a lot of other players and positions in football. We're just very biased on the quarterback position, hence QB spotlight. So let's look at the schedule real quick, right? So you open up UTSA, Utah State, boom, fairly should be easy wins for Texas in there. But let's look at their home schedule. They get Auburn at home. They get Mississippi State at home. They get Florida at home. They get South Carolina and Samford at home. You could very, very, very realistically, if we're excluding, you could very realistically win all your games at home. Your toughest games are probably going to be Florida and South Carolina at home. Depending if you think Jackson Arnold's going to take a big step at Auburn, you can throw in Auburn too. But you get all your quote-unquote easy games at home, which is probably what you want, right? If you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you go 7-0 at home, you're in a very good spot to hit that win total by 1 or 2 games. even if you go 6-1, say you lose against South Carolina or Florida, you're still in a really good spot. So I think you have to win at least 6 of those games at home, but you got a good chance to come away with 7, especially because you play easier teams, Mississippi State, Auburn at home. On the away, you have Notre Dame, you have Arkansas, LSU, Mizzou, and Texas. So if you can manage going 1, 2, 3, 3-2 on the road, and then you go 7-0 or 6-1 at home, you're in a good spot to hit that win total. Now Texas is going to be tough. That's always a rivalry game. At LSU is going to be tough. Mizzou should be in a good spot. Arkansas, I think it depends on how much improved you think Taylor Green is. Then Notre Dame, can they break in their quarterback in time? Are you going to take a more experienced quarterback, or are you going to take a new quarterback on at home? I think a lot of it depends on how well you think the other quarterbacks they play. I think a lot of that depends on how well you think those quarterbacks actually are. But I want to hear from you. Do you think A&M hits that win total? Are they going to be right at 8 again? I don't even know what the odds are. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What you think, 1, about the win total, and 2, about Marcel Reed. What do you think his strengths are? Like we said, we talked about his poise and competitiveness. We thought he was better off of play action than his athleticism. And then his improvement areas, let me know those thoughts as well in the comments. We talked about being more consistent, getting rid of the ball quicker, driving the ball downfield a bit more. So we'll have a lot more Marcel Reed content. We'll see if we can find a way to put some film out as well, like we did last year. But if you like SEC quarterbacks or just college quarterback content in general, please consider subscribing, share, all that fun YouTube stuff. It definitely does help us grow. Keep following us along. We got more Marcel Reed content on the way. We'll see you next time. Peace.